January 7th, 2021 by developer Suzaku and publisher Top Hat Studios, Sense, a Cyberpunk Ghost Story is one very unique adventure game, and although I'm saying it's an adventure game, it's really hard to categorize. But I'll leave it at that. It's an adventure game that does not play by conventional rules, and I like it. Thanks to the publishers for the review key. Let's start with the story. Now, I'm not going to say I was able to follow this story entirely, as there were moments when I couldn't tell my ass from my elbow. I was completely lost. Now, this could have been because I know very little of Chinese folklore, or the storytelling was a bit convoluted, or maybe I'm just not as smart as I think I am. But this really did not detract from my experience either way. Even though I was lost at times, I couldn't pull myself away till the end credits rolled. And believe me, there were times when I really wanted to call it quits, but the further you push forward in this game, is the better it gets. Sense really grew on me.
No turning back now, May.
You are the voluptuous May, and the story starts out with you getting off a train to meet up with a blind date. Upon your arrival to the area, you're greeted with a crime scene. You work your way past it and head towards the club. Before entering the club, the game shows its true colors. Yeah, real early. You're sent on a fetch quest because some lady bumped into you and your ID fell under a parked car. So you do the dance, get your ID and head inside. It's shortly after that shit goes sideways. You're in some spiritual dimensional shift and pretty much end up in a Cyberpunk 2083 Hong Kong version of the Twilight Zone. You're now stuck in an abandoned building that's crawling with spirits, some evil, some more on the Casper side, and it's up to you to perform exorcisms, offerings, and a slew of other things in an attempt to figure out what's going on and how to get out. Most of the game is played out inside this dark, dingy building infested with ghosts and traps, and under normal circumstances, this would have become monotonous and arduous. But always a minute before apathy sets in, the game pulls a rabbit out and continues to entertain with this bizarre yet intriguing plot. There's a heap more I could tell you regarding this storyline, but I'll take my spoiler review so far and no further. In everything, there are rules of engagement, so I won't ruin the entire game for you. Just know, if you're deeply into story-driven adventure games with more emphasis on story and puzzles over action and acrobatics, you'll be pleased. Before I get on to gameplay, let's talk visuals and sound. The visuals here are for me 70% hit, 30% miss. The visuals are where Sense's indie origins really begin to show. While there's some beautiful hand-drawn visuals here, with these eye-catching backgrounds and character models, it's a two-edged sword. First, your character animations are janky as hell. When she walks, it's like frame drop city. It just looks wrong, but when she runs, it gets so much worse. I'm not a game designer, so I won't even pretend to know exactly why this is, but I wouldn't expect this from a relatively basic 2 or 2.5D game in this day and age. And there's some sections where the camera zooms in, and it's just as you would expect. You magnify the picture, you magnify the problem. And further on the character animations, outside of the glitchy low frame rate look, her movements are very unnatural, and this is because she doesn't have enough frames of animation. She moves like a soldier marching, like she makes these unnaturally wide strides as opposed to walking like a regular human being. I may not be describing this correctly, but you should be able to see for yourself what I'm saying. I would expect such animations from a game in the 16-bit era. Not today. Sound. The score is great, well suited for this engagement. The voice acting, however, needs help.
Leave me alone!
Not that it was god-awful, but there's a mix of voice and text, and the text outweighs the voice by miles. The English was more low-tier B-movie, but the Chinese, I believe it was, sounded solid. And that may be due to my ignorance, but it sounded way better than the English. That being said, I'll always prefer even bad voice acting over text. The sound effects, good enough, with the exception of the footsteps. It really sounds like only 2 sounds were used for the footsteps throughout the entire game. Again, I'm no game dev, but how hard can it be to add more variety to footsteps in this generation of gaming? Let's get to gameplay. Now, of course, gameplay is paramount, but like I said earlier, Sense a Cyberpunk Ghost Story is carried more by the story, the lore, the puzzles. So while I disagree that this game should be classified as a point-and-click or visual novel, There isn't a whole lot to do other than move from floor to floor, solve puzzles and watch these cool comic book styled anime cutscenes. So, I'll admit, the actual gameplay is weak and very linear. Sense feels like a mix between old school Resident Evil games and this little indie gem called Distraint. It also has a Metroidvania feel to it as well, as there's quite a bit of backtracking. You'll constantly meet up on areas or items you're unable to interact with until you've completed something else somewhere else. As a matter of fact, this is the element of the game I dreaded. I hate backtracking and repeating myself in real life, and I feel the same about it in games. And here in Sense, it feels like a whole lot of forced exploration, forced conversations, and an overall feel of manufactured hardships. Feels kinda like padding. There are a lot of people you'll talk to, a lot of items in your inventory, a lot of things you'll read. That feels like nothing more than busy work. I read where there are alternate endings and scenarios based on your wardrobe and such, but I only played through once, and from what I experienced, a lot of items and conversations meant absolutely nothing, and if you have to play through Sense several times to experience this, then that's more a flaw than anything else in my eyes. Other than the backtracking, I also felt that the devs went overboard with the puzzles, but in hindsight, based on the kind of game this is, without the puzzles, there wouldn't be much to it. Although I'm not really a lover of puzzles generally. I feel like I had my fill of difficult brain-busting puzzles back in the days of the original Tomb Raider games. I kinda grew tired of them actually. At first I thought Sense was like Cloudpunk, a non-violent adventure game. But as the game opens up, I realized I was wrong. There is combat. It's just wonky as hell. It's pretty bad actually. But like the backtracking and the puzzles, it still seemed to work. You hardly had encounters, but when you did, it was just some weird QuickTime events mixed in with some other video game oddities. Yeah, that's something I noticed halfway through this. Sense does not play by conventional rules. From the puzzles, the combat, the exploration, the ending, pacing, to the overall game design, Suzaku did not play by the rules, they made their own. And I found this refreshing, because although I did not like the combat mechanics, which were really all over the place and random, it did keep me on my toes and curious to see how the next engagement would play out. Sometimes there were QTEs, sometimes weird minigames, sometimes actual real-time combat. Yeah, all over the place. But I applaud the devs for not giving two shits about what everybody else has done, thinks, or expects. You had several ways to banish these spirits and protect yourself. You can run and hide, you can wear a jade bangle which acts as a kind of life bar, do the whole minigame or QTE thing, and then get rid of some completely by doing these ceremonial offerings. The puzzles which were in full effect ranged from simple, which sometimes you did not even have to pay attention. You only needed to pick up whichever items you could and go back to a room you visited or a brand new one, and the items you had would solve the puzzle. But then like I said, no rules. There were some obscure brainbusters as well. This was the first in a long time I had to be playing a game with a physical notepad and pen. Some of these puzzles had me thinking, how the hell did you really expect me to figure this out? There was this one puzzle where you found the combination to a lock, and the combination you found was kind of jumbled in a way that you couldn't just put it in as it read. Finding it wasn't enough. You had to then decipher the damn thing. But I tell you this much, when I did figure these messes out, I felt like Leo in Titanic. Oh yeah. The save feature was treated similarly. There are temporary autosaves, checkpoints, quick saves, and the ability to save at these Betacam machines. At first I was thinking, what the hell is this convoluted nonsense? But as I progressed, I realized this did no harm and was actually abundantly useful. Quick tip, save often. After every puzzle, after every discovery. Backtracking is already an issue here. You don't want to make that any worse. Here's a thumbs down for loading screens. This goes back to my Ari comparison. Remember back in the days in early Resident Evil games where you would step through a door and you had to sit and watch this slow door animation unfold? Well, it's here, and man is it annoying. It happens 98% of the time you go through a door around a corner, and going through doors and around bends are a huge part of Sense, so yeah, that was pretty awful. But here's another thumbs up though. I am impressed with the way Suzaku was able to use this relatively simple 2.5D design to create something genuinely compelling. There were many truly disturbing and frightening moments at play here, from the gameplay to the story delivery. Now, here's where this review may get divisive. The controversy surrounding this title. And again, I applaud the devs for not giving a rat's ass. Here's where I get a few thumbs down and on subs. The protagonist, May. In this day and age of channel shop like fragile sensibilities, people are up in arms about how she looks. Not only is she well endowed in the chest, hip, and butt areas, but the wardrobe options are quite outstanding, for lack of a better word. Check this out. Yeah, well, sparing myself the risk of going off on a rant, let me just leave it at this. I'm fine with this decision. More power to you, May. You're a well-designed video game character, and although your choice in outfits are quite impractical, they do fit you well.
Perfect.
Can't imagine why your date didn't show up like 3 hours early and saved you from this whole ordeal, actually.
I am not going to die here.
So what we have here is easily the best, not indie game, just the best game I've played all year. Yeah, I know it's just February, but still, Sense impressed me. I was expecting some tacked-together indie attempt, especially after seeing a few videos before I played it, from reviewers who played clearly no more than an hour or two of the game. With sweet hand-drawn visuals, a good score, and its sound effects to boot, unique gameplay, a gripping story, although I was lost at times and still on the fence about that ending. Oh, by the way, props to you guys as well, on the what I'd like to call interactive ending. Even the ending of this game was outside the box, although it left me scratching my head a bit. So yeah, all around, Sense, a Cyberpunk Ghost Story gets a huge thumbs up from me. At the end it stated, Suzaku will return. I eagerly await your next game, fine people. Thanks again for this experience. AAA games are all well and good, but many times, if you'd like a truly unique experience, one off the beaten path, then the indie scene is where you want to be. Show your support for independent game developers. Most if not all indie games are priced relatively low. Some are even free with the option to donate, so there's really no reason to pass. Thank you for watching. If you like my content, feel free to like, share, comment, subscribe, and hit the notification bell. Let's say I pissed you off though, then I'm sure we all know where to find the various hate buttons. Either way, I won't hold it against you. Our game is never over.